for joining us today. We are excited to present this webinar on FSSC 22000, spotlighting the certification program. My name is Lena Bush. I am a regional sales manager for SGS. I work specifically with companies in the food and beverage space to set them up with certifications, supply chain, and other business goals. I'm joined today by Jacqueline Southey from the FSSC Foundation Group, as well as our own Jennifer Lott. Jennifer is the technical director for the food and beverage audits and assessments here at SGS. Jacqueline is the North America representative for FSSC. Both will be sharing a spotlight on this particular pathway to the GFSI. For those who may not already be familiar, SGS, here's a bit about us. We are a very large and leading inspections, verification, testing, and company certification company. We've been active for many years. We hold a presence in many different countries, and we work across 7 key business areas. So here's what we do for companies, including those involved in food and beverage. These are some of the services that we provide to support product integrity, workplace safety, factories, as well as the products. So you see some of those highlighted here, if we could ever assist in some of those, again, overarching business goals that you may have. Specifically for food, SGS is involved from farm to fork. We do work with companies, and I'm sitting here in North America in the New Jersey office. We work a lot on the certifications. So when I talk with clients, I very often go to this chart to see, hey, where are you in the supply chain in the food world from farm to fork? And if you see below, there are certain codes and certifications that relate to your daily practices. So you might find some of those there. Again, today we're going to be focusing on FSSC. So here's a deeper look at our agenda and what we'll be going through. You will notice if you ever have questions or some ideas come into mind, I encourage you to write them down right away at the Q&A widget box that you may find now on your computer screen. So we will be answering questions at the end, but it's nice to capture them as the content is being discussed. So go ahead and write them down, or I guess type them in to that box. First, I've got a question for you to start us off. Is your organization certified to FSSC 22000? What are the responses that best suit? So this is also a nice way to see that we will be asking for you to type in your answers. You'll see this poll come up a few different areas. And I think with this, I'm very proud to hand the content over to Jacqueline. Here's some of the poll results. And take it away, Jacqueline.
That's very good. Well, thank you very much, Lena. And thank you very much, both Lena and to Jennifer and to SGS for this opportunity to join you today. It's nice to speak to Lena and Jennifer and to you. So we called this webinar really an opportunity to sort of tell you more about FSSC, but this is a useful poll for us to find out, the level of knowledge out there so that we know, how to pitch it. Many organizations are already certified to FSSC. Maybe you're joining us to find out how it could be applicable to other parts of the supply chain. Maybe you're joining us to find out more about our updates. But it looks like we have a large percentage that are actually not certified to FSSC. So maybe you're considering certification to FSSC, which is very useful. It's very interesting for us to know. And I'm sure Lena will follow up with you. And for those of you that have never heard of it or you don't know about FSSC, then you're at the best place. So thank you very much for answering that question. And then let's just get started off. So the title of the webinar also is FSSC Fit for Company of Any Size. So, we've been around for about 12 years now. We're considered the new kid on the block, but actually we're very well established. But there are some, sometimes there's a few rumors that maybe FSSC is only useful for the large companies, or maybe it's only useful for ingredient manufacturers. And hopefully, we can talk through these so that we know that actually FSSC could be a very good fit for you and your company. So as we start off, I'd like to introduce the Foundation FSSC, which owns FSSC 22000. And part of our goal, or part of our mantra, is to provide trust and deliver impact to the consumer goods industry. So we are expanding. We're not just working with the food industry. We are working with other parts of the consumer goods industry. We now have 2 certification schemes, FSSC 22000 and FSSC 24000, which we will learn a little bit about later on. But our main aim is to bring the management system approach to industry. So we want to help industry capitalize on the opportunities to optimize their business practices through the use of the management system approach. And so we believe that that's a way we can help industry by working with the management systems. Foundation is also independent. It's non-profit, which differentiates us from some other programs out there. And we're also committed to the United Nations Sustainability Goals. So we have a vision of making the world a better place. And some of that is evidenced by our updates in version 6, where we've introduced the need to monitor and reduce food loss and waste in order to contribute to sustainability. Also the release of FSSC 24000. And so as we move forward, we hope to use our position with FSSC 22000, which is a world leader, to help companies achieve their own sustainability goals and join us in making the world a better place. So what is FSSC 22000? So effectively, FSSC 22000 is a GFSI benchmarked food safety certification program. But again, it's slightly different to some other systems in as much that it provides a framework for effective food safety management system. And it does that by being solely dependent on the science-based ISO standards. And so the ISO standards are actually written by experts. They're developed by consensus on the global platform. So they are international standards. They're used by countries all over the world, and they provide that scientific relevant basis to food safety management. ISO 22000 is the food safety management system that's developed by the ISO organization, but on its own, it does not meet all the requirements of GFSI. And GFSI is a business-to-business requirement throughout the world now, really, in the food safety supply chain, in the food supply chain. So the Foundation FSSE makes the ISO 22000 management system benchmarkable by the GFSI. So we add the additional requirements that needed to meet those requirements that the GFSI benchmarking requirements. I did mention that we're non-profit. We are non-profit, and the money that we do generate, we contribute to our very important, robust integrity program. We are global, and it's very important for us and our users to know that the certifications are reliable and that they are valid. So we work through a program of licensing our certification bodies, such as partners like SGS, who meet our requirements, that we work very closely with to together provide a very reliable, secure certification program. We do work with some of the largest companies throughout the world. We protect the brands of PepsiCo, Mars, Nestle, Cargill, because they realize the benefits of employing a food safety management system based on the ISO systems, and that we currently have over 33,000 certificates worldwide. So we are well established. While you may not have heard of us, you might not know us, we are established. We're in the field. We have 33,000 certificates worldwide, and we like to think that we protect the brands of the world's leading food and beverage companies. So how do we use this ISO management system? So the scheme is actually divided into 3 parts. So we have the ISO 22000 management system, which is applied to any company that has FSSC certification. We have sector-specific prerequisite programs, which provide the benefits or the highlights or the provides the requirements for good manufacturing practice in that sector. And these two, ISO 22000 and the sector-specific prerequisite programs, are all ISO documents. They're all written by experts, as I said, through consensus, and we don't have any control over those. What we have control over is the additional FSSC 22000 requirements, and they're the ones that allow us to update the scheme. Food safety requirements are often changing. The ISO standards tend to change slower because they have to go through a revision process, but we have the capacity to add that agility to update. And we also have the requirements for our governance program, which I mentioned is which maintains the security of all the certificates. So that's our system. Sorry,
whoa, Jacqueline, it looks like there's 3 programs for 1 audit. So I was wondering if you could comment on that a bit, or Jennifer, if you could jump in.
I think it's important before, we let Jacqueline continue, is that when we look at other food safety certification programs that are out there for us to become certified to, they're very similar in nature, where BRC has built it into one standard, and Section 4 really focuses on site-specific standards or the prerequisite programs. And within the SQF standard, they have the module 11, 12, and 13 for food, packaging, and storage and distribution. So they're all very similar, but different in just the same. So back to you, Jacqueline.
Yeah, so I think that while we are different, then there is that, that leveling that brings us all together. The GFSI benchmark obviously brings us similar to BRC and SQF that you mentioned. They may work with modules. We work within this framework of the ISO management system. And the other difference with having the ISO management system there as the framework, that kind of defines, the management requirements. You have to have management commitment. It also sort of defines the elements for leadership and communication. They're all written into that ISO bit. The sector-specific prerequisite programs, they are different. They kind of make the differentiation for the different parts of the supply chain. And we know that the supply chain is made up of many sectors. And as we move forward, I'd just be interesting to see who is online and where your interests lie. So we've got another poll here. We talk about sort of food manufacturing as being a really key aspect in the food supply chain, but also there are other areas of the sectors, the other sectors of the supply chain. So here's a poll question for you, and I wondered if we could answer and let us know the sector of the supply chain that you are engaged in, and then we can see whether we can answer some of your questions. So we're just coming through, because obviously, Lena and Jennifer, you're working with different people throughout the supply chain. I don't think you're just working with food manufacturers.
Correct. It kind of goes back to the slide I showed earlier, where it takes, I call it the farm to fork slide, but it's everyone on here. Maybe you touch the product in a certain area, not necessarily as a processor. I think we've got some answers. So thank you all for participating and clicking in.
So as we thought, I think that there is a large sector, that are involved in the food manufacturing, a large number of people involved in the food manufacturing sector, food packaging, and this kind of reflects a lot of the distribution of our certificates. But it also, allows me to explain that sometimes people think that FSSC is only geared to food manufacturers, or it only applies to the manufacturers of ingredients, for instance. But actually, because we have that 3-part makeup of the scheme with the ISO management system, the additional requirements that provides the additional requirements for governance, the prerequisite programs allow us to be applied to different aspects of the sector. Transport and storage, for instance, is an example of where we can offer FSSC 22000. And this is a useful example, if you like, of how that prerequisite program approach works. So transport and storage, although there's only a few representatives here, is a large growing area. And I think, Lena, perhaps you have talked to some other people that are involved in this sector. The transport and storage is a very important part of the food supply chain, and it's becoming more important, as growers and manufacturers and processors of food sort of ship their products all over the country and all over the world. And they all rely on the transporters to look after the food while it's in their custody. It needs to be kept in the right conditions. It needs to be protected from any contamination. It needs also to be protected from food fraud or any interference. Labeling, the packaging is also important. It hasn't got to be defaced. It hasn't got to be mismanaged or end up in the wrong place. So FSSC provides a certification program for transport and storage companies using this prerequisite program approach. So the prerequisite program provides all the things that a transport and storage company needs to consider on top of that management system. So you have the management system approach, which provides all those essential management system processes. And then these are the prerequisite programs that apply to a particular sector, and in this case, the transport and storage industry.
And then to your point, Jacqueline, when I was auditing storage and distribution, there are certain things that in an S&D operation that are really important. And when we focus on food or product safety, we're looking at sanitation and housekeeping. We're looking at pest control. We're looking at segregation of allergens. We're looking at if there's temperature controls, how you're managing that and what happens when you violate the temperature limits. We're looking, to your point, at traceability. How do we know what we shipped and where we shipped? And these are key in storage and distribution facilities when we're doing the FSSC audit.
And if I can interject, because I am very appreciative of everyone that is typing in and clicking in. Beverages, so to those that do manufacture bottled or canned, carbonated or non-beverages, FSSC 22000 can apply for these as well. And we should have had a category for that for the poll. But certainly there are, just so that we know, presenting here that there are quite a few also from the beverage.
They would come under manufacturing, so that we are covered. They are covered in that area. Bottling, the manufactured bottles are covered under food packaging, so they are covered within FSSC 22000. Food additives is also covered too.
Yeah, and Jacqueline, not to go down a deep dive, but for those, because there's so many that were not certified or not aware yet, that within FSSC, there are categories, and the categories are subcategories. So when we think about beverage, that shows up in category C4. And so we look at FSSC as it's a complex standard in some ways in how we segregate what the auditors can do. But we want to make sure that we have the right auditor doing the audit, and we'd never send an auditor who does meat slaughter to a beverage company because they just won't have the knowledge to do a good audit of the system.
And that's another example of why FSSC is made up in the way that it is with the different sectors. And so the requirements for the qualification of auditors are all included there in those FSSC additional requirements. So what you say is a very good point, and I think it demonstrates the efficiency of the partnership of FSSC with SGS to provide our customers with the best service and the one that suits them. So I think that's a very good point. So these are the prerequisite programs, and this is the way FSSC is made up. And if we sort of move forward, another question that we have, and I'm not sure whether we have it popped up yet in the questions, is whether FSSC is only applicable to the large organizations. And I did mention that we do certify some of the world's largest organizations, but actually FSSC is very good for the small companies. And the reason that it's good for the small companies is because of the makeup with the ISO 22000 management system, which provides that flexibility of the management system. So the benefits of FSSC 22000 to the small and medium enterprises, which are the small companies, are kind of listed here. These are just a few of the benefits that are, that kind of are overlooked as you look at FSSC 22000. So an important feature is that we're flexible. The ISO management system provides that flexible risk-based approach. And that sets us apart, again, from some other GFSI approved schemes because it's a more flexible approach. It's less prescriptive. And you can use those elements that are appropriate to you and that it can grow with you. You have to have certain elements involved within the certification. You have to have management commitment. You have to organize your internal audits. You have to do your management review. But if you're a small company, you can do that within that framework of FSSC 22000. Another benefit of FSSC 22000, and this is also part of ISO 22000, is the ability to use external resources. So within ISO 22000 is the need for a HACCP plan. You have to, we align with Kodak's HACCP, and you have to have your own HACCP plan and define your control points. And sometimes for a small organization, this is quite a heavy lift. But there is a facility within ISO 22000 that allows you to use HACCP plans that have been externally written. They've been written either by a consultant or have been used for your product type that you can incorporate into your management system. So that's fairly key to ISO 22000. Another benefit of FSSC is within that ISO 22000 management system and the detailing of management commitment, leadership, communication, it defines all the elements of food safety culture. And they're baked in to that management system approach. And I'm sure you'll be aware that food safety culture is now listed as a requirement. It's listed within the regulations. And food safety culture is already incorporated in ISO 22000. We have case studies on our website that describe how you can't really conduct a management system without establishing that management system. And the management system, the food safety culture is developed as you can't establish the management system without the culture. And as you develop the management system, the culture evolves. So that's a very important part also of ISO 22000. The audit duration also can accommodate small companies. If audit duration is a burden for small companies, there is a exemption for small companies with less than 20 FTEs, full-time employees, that you can reduce the audit time. And also a huge benefit for companies of all sizes is because it's based on ISO 22000, it has the common framework, it can integrate with other management systems, perhaps that you're already running. Management systems include 9001, 14001, and they're all on the same framework. We'll talk a little bit more about that later because it's a very important aspect of FSSC 22000 and the management system approach, but it's also a benefit to small companies. If you're already running a management system like 9001, it's parallel. You can install FSSC 22000 in parallel to 9001. Now, it also includes a step-up program for if establishing ISO FSSC 22000 is too much of a lift. There is this development program as well. Part of ISO 20, part of the management system approach is the need to develop this risk-based approach and to do a risk analysis. And there's a very useful practical guide. So if you are a small company and you are looking at that ISO 22000 management approach, I recommend going to the ISO website. There's this practical guide, and it was actually written for small organizations, and it has good advice and has some practical examples of how you can establish that management system approach. So I think that's most hopeful for the small, medium companies, and it's a good resource. So I'm going to just share that with you there. So just moving on for, again, thinking about the small companies is some of them may still find the establishment of GFSI certified FSSC 22000 too much of a lift. I don't know, Lena, if you work with any companies that maybe are smaller that think that it's a little bit onerous to do FSSC 22000. So FSSC has developed a development program. And this is really for, you know, small companies, small that are just starting out in the supply chain that want to supply some of those larger companies. It's also important for the larger companies who need to expand their supply chain. We've been through a very sort of tumultuous time where the supply chain has been adversely affected. And so the development program is a way of getting small companies started on that food safety management ladder. So the FSSC development program provides some free materials. They're all on our website. And it provides a step-up process to achieve FSSC 22000 certification. We've developed a tool, so it allows you to do a gap assessment, and we have these on the website, and it allows you to learn those processes that you need to start in order to get on that food safety management ladder, as I said. It's aligned with FSSC 22000. It's not GFSI benchmarked because it's like FSSC 22000 light, but it's aligned with FSSC 22000, ISO 22000, and the all-important Codex HACCP, and it's aligned with the GFSI Global Markets programs. So, and it's developed around those essential tools of food safety management. So it's a great learning tool. We have, as I said, as part of our materials, self-evaluation tools so that you can download these and see what's required. And it's for any size company as you're starting off. And it's available in English, Spanish, Chinese, Turkish, and Japanese. So if you have, if you are working with suppliers overseas that you would like them to start on the pathway of FSSC 22000, then this is also a good way to start. So it's a good way of expanding your own supply chain, and it's a good way of getting onto the supply chain of some of the larger customers. And it's accepted by a lot of the major retailers worldwide, and it's a good way to start. So, and if you do this, then you achieve a conformity statement. You don't achieve a GFSI certification, but you achieve a conformity statement. And like FSSC 22000, the conformity statements are also listed on our website. So customers can see that you've achieved this conformity statement, and they can see that you're on the pathway to FSSC 22000. So this is the pathway that you might choose to take. So using the materials, you can do the self-evaluation, and then you can, if you need extra training, you can achieve training through our partners or like SGS. And then as a conformity assessment body, SGS can come and do a conformity assessment, and you can achieve level 1 conformity. You can choose.
So Jacqueline, if I can just interject, where this does sometimes happen in my conversation in the field is they didn't really get requested to be certified yet, but if they are, as I said, I'm sitting in the United States, so a lot of my customers, maybe they distribute their products regionally or domestically. It's when they take sometimes that extra step. Someone from overseas might be interested with exporting, I guess, is where this might come into play.
To use a conformity statement for exporting or for FSSC?
FSSC, sorry, to get started on a pathway to certify.
So certainly, so this would be your pathway to certification. You can stay here for a year, or you can, you stay here forever if you like. Many companies globally, if you're looking at exporting or also domestically, will accept this for up to a year, and then this will allow you to move on to FSSC 22000. So that's the conformity statement. And then you talked about exporting. So maybe see if our audience online, maybe they are interested in this exporting market all over the US and outside of the US, and see how FSSC can benefit them. So we've got another poll. So if you can just share with us your information about whether you export outside of the US, whether your market is mainly domestic, or if you are thinking of exporting in the future. And then, maybe, Lena, we can help with companies that are looking to export outside of the US.
And to be candid, we don't know where everyone is tuning in from. So I would just say exporting outside of where your factory is. So either way, let's do it that way. It is a global scheme. But the idea behind this question is your product, being shared and enjoyed outside of where the factory is?
That's a good point. I think we do have a fairly international audience here.
I'm not sure. We'll find out now.
Okay. All right. So let's see how we're growing. So we're fairly evenly matched here. So it does look like the US, the global market, as we say, is of interest. So definitely. Definitely there's an interest in the global market. So certainly FSSC has a global footprint of our 33,000 certificates. We have them all over the world. We have global representatives all over the world, and global recognition, because many of the regulators use ISO 22000 as the national regulation. So ISO 22000 has very good recognition all over the world, and FSSC provides that extra boost with the security, the integrity program, and the GFSI benchmarking. So let's just move on. So just moving over to you, Lena and Jennifer, about this global market that we both support.
Right, thank you, Jacqueline. Many people know that SGS is the world's leading certification testing and inspection body. What many people don't know, that SGS is also a solution provider. So we can help you provide, find solutions to problems. And some of the issues that we talk about is within the requirements of GFSI standards, you have to have a supply chain or a supplier monitoring program. So SGS can actually help you do supplier audits because we have this global footprint of auditors around the world. The standards require that you do internal audits. If SGS is not your certification body, we can help you with internal audits. We offer a large amount of training, many topics, many subjects that we can cover with you. As far as GFSI goes, we do risk assessment, we do corrective action, we do internal audit, we do a number of trainings to help you maintain or get your certification. We also can do facilitation. So if you have a risk assessment training, we can spend an additional day with you facilitating, building that baseline of a risk assessment. So what is your flow? What are the risks? Helping you work through designing your process for you so that we're not doing it for you, but you're just giving us the words and we're just writing them down for you. We do gap assessments. So as we move towards FSSC 22000 version 6, before you actually have your version 6 audit, we can do a gap assessment of the additional elements that you've put in to meet the version 6 requirements to see, are you meeting them or are there still gaps there, so you don't find out in nonconformities when you have your first assessment against the new requirements. Plus many, many others that we can offer to you that would help you in your search to maintain product safety or food safety. Additionally, just the next slide, it just shows you where we have our auditors around the world and how global our footprint is. And that matches very closely with what Jacqueline was saying earlier about how we are both very much global organizations and we're here to support you in whatever needs you have.
Excellent. And as I said, FSSC also has boots on the ground throughout the world. So I am the North American representative. We have representatives in India, in China, in Japan, in Turkey, and of course in Europe. So if you have suppliers there or if you have facilities there and you're interested in FSSC 22,000 certification, SGS can work with you and FSSC can work with you to help you in that. So that's great. So thank you. It's good to have a partner like SGS that we have the world covered. Talking about the world market, well, we are. I'm going to talk a little bit about. I mentioned it earlier, FSSC 24,000, and again, we're with the world market in in our sights and the need to start thinking about sustainability. I mentioned that FSSC also is very supportive of the United Nations Sustainability Goals, and we mentioned version 6 incorporating a requirement to monitor food loss and waste. And I see that there's a question already about food loss and waste and how you need to start being aware of it and measuring it and improving it. And it's all part of a contribution to the global reduction in wasting resources. But part of this also is last year the foundation introduced FSSC 24,000 to meet the market demand for sustainability. And FSSC 24,000 offers a certification scheme for the auditing and certification of social sustainability management systems. So again, we come back to this management systems, and the goal is to ensure safe and fair working conditions. As we all become reliant on this global supply chain, we talk about the developing economies, we're working with them, looking at them as suppliers, providing them with the global markets program like the development program. We also need to address the conditions of our workers. And this is as I said, a social management system. I'm not going to go into it in great detail here, but if you want to learn more about it, there is an FSSC Insights webinar that will talk about FSSC 24,000 next week, at the beginning of next week. So you could register for that. Just go on fssc.com and there'll be a link. I think there's a hot link here also to register. But the importance of this is the way it focuses on sustainability and it stays in line with the management system approach. And you'll recognize this 3-part program. It's a voluntary scheme. It was developed in consultation with a lot of our market and our customers and our board of stakeholders. And it's based on the PAS 24,000, which is the management system. So like the ISO 22,000 management system, this has the same framework. It aligns with the food safety management system. It will align with your ISO 9000 management system or your 14,001 management system. And it will address those problems related to human rights and worker safety throughout the supply chain. So as we know that, this is becoming a focus for industry, particularly if you have an overseas supply chain. And the aim is to ensure organizations provide safe working conditions and meet business ethics and apply due diligence throughout their supply chain. So it's aligned with the food safety management system. It meets with our requirements to, provide trust and create and provide impact, because you need to trust your supply chain. You don't want to be sidelined by or blindsided by problems in your supply chain with unsuitable working conditions. And as I said, one of the major benefits is that it's aligned on the management system. So there's more information on this on our website. And again, it comes back to this 3-part system, our reliance and use and benefits gained from the ISO management system approach. And all of these management systems are all integrated. And I think that, you are familiar with these, Jennifer. We work a lot with companies. SGS works with companies that are certified 9001, 14,001. And it's great the way that they all work together. So the benefits of the management system approach, obviously, is the management system is sort of the best way of doing something. It provides a process and it optimizes your performance. And if you can use them together, you use better use of your resources. Again, reduction in waste, improving sustainability, and improved financial performance. And they're all based on this, this risk-based management system. and providing resilience. This was evidence as well over the last few years, and just maintaining profitability, meeting regulations. And so this is this whole integrated management system approach that can also offer opportunities for sort of integrated audits and working together. So overall, the whole approach is to increase, increased efficiencies and working towards a more sustainable future. So I think that's kind of what I've got on that. So Jennifer, yes.
I was going to say, and to your point there, because they are all written to the high-level system, we have the same clause numbers for management review and for internal audits and for supplier monitoring and such. So they're very much integrated, and you can have 9001 and 22000. And when you do management review, you just tap on the additional pieces for the standards that you're adding to your program.
And sometimes when I speak with companies where they're not sure which standard to apply, or maybe they haven't been certified to one before, I often say, well, you've got something written down. You've got the baseline of your protocols, baseline of your habits. Let's not recreate that. Let's build on it. So this slide to me kind of illustrates that idea of, in this example, you're building around the approach or the pathway under ISO 9001. Maybe you're tacking on food safety as part of that. I want to say umbrella, but
Right,
so that you're not
yeah,
recreating
yeah.
everything just to now,
Right,
oh, by the way we make food.
Right,
It's
right.
just,
It's clause 8 that makes the change. So within food safety, when we look at 22,000, clause 8 goes into HACCP and risk assessment. When we look at 9001, clause 8 is where you have the operational requirements. So it's the clause 8 that really makes changes when we're looking at these different standards.
I mean, it really is, really is a good strength. You have this network, you have these building blocks which make, build that foundation to make a stronger process. You have this common language, and I think the different sectors, or not sector, I don't know, the different departments learn from each other. I think the food safety is used to doing a hazard assessment. Maybe your information security department is not quite so used to doing that hazard assessment. So it's a great way to share expertise. And there's, opportunities to integrate processes and meetings and documents. So generally, it's a good movement. Excuse me, I'm going to move on. Excuse me. So I just wanted to say how we can provide additional support here. And we have, lots of information on our website through guidance documents, brochures, webinars. So I would advocate, going and having a look around our website. You can always reach out and ask questions. There's some case studies on there. The guidance documents are very useful also to small and medium-sized companies, as well as to larger companies as you incorporate FSSC 22000. And we have webinars that are already pre-recorded, what FSSC is, how to integrate management systems. So again, these are all available on our website for, they're pre-recorded that you can listen to. So again, I think that's me just moving on. I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you. Absolutely. So, and thank you very, very much, Jacqueline and Jennifer, for the time thus far, for the expertise shared so far. For SGS's part, we actually do live webinars. So these are online events, if you will, for different training courses. We focus them with your audit in mind for a lot of them. So whether you're, I always say to clients, pick a standard, but we do have an implementation class as well as an internal audit class. They're not pre-recorded. Most of them are two days or so in duration, where you're actually in time with your instructor, but you don't need to travel. But that gives you the opportunity to really understand, okay, well, what are the expectations if we're going to pursue a new standard or pivot between standards. These classes are able to kind of at least be part of your research on what would that look like, what would that feel like on implementing a certain standard. For this spotlight on FSSC ISO 22000, we've got these classes coming up if you wanted to learn a little bit more. The SGS Academy, actually, you can link to it in your screen now. You'll see some of our courses are like these ones, live webinar education, and then others are pre-recorded, shorter, I call them lunch and learns, but basically for dive into certain areas in food and beverage production, or even ISO management for those that aren't directly in food and beverage. But I think everyone, I think that's what I wanted to say about this slide. And to take a look, just as Jacqueline invited, I invite you also to take a look at the SGS Academy. Thank you so much to both our speakers for sharing the insights that you have. And thank you all for joining us. And honestly, the Q&A participation has been wonderful. We do have some questions, so I was going to kind of go right in there. One of them comes from a food delivery company, and I thought maybe what we can do, because we've got two speakers, is I'll ask the question, and then Jennifer, if maybe you could do, because you've been in so many different food delivery companies and storage and distribution audits. So again, this is when you're receiving prepackaged product. In this case, it would be prepackaged food, and then you're distributing it to the final, whether it's a retailer or at home. How would a certification such as FSSC 22000 impact, I guess I would read this to be impact on the daily operations or the habit of a food delivery company on FSSC pursuit?
Okay. So from the standard management system requirements, they're going to be there. So we're going to have, the internal audit and all those things we talked about a little bit before, management review and such. But where it really becomes more critical is when we're talking about food delivery, we're going to take a deeper dive into the delivery vehicles. So if you're delivering something that is refrigerated, how are you managing and controlling that temperature until the very last bit? And how are you maintaining and managing the calibration of the equipment that holds that temperature, and the cleaning and sanitation of those delivery vehicles? So this is what I'm thinking about delivering to a retailer. Jacqueline, you can help me out a little bit of this when we begin to think about, is this question really geared toward last mile? So when it goes from a grocery store into a vehicle to a consumer, how that works, or to someone's home. So Jacqueline, can you jump in and speak to that?
Yeah, we have this gray area of the the last mile. So FSSC does not have within scope at this time to cover a discrete home delivery system. Like we can only cover it if it belongs to the manufacturer. So if you're a manufacturer or you're a caterer and you're delivering, then we can cover it. But we do not have certification at this time. It's still being worked out for the Uber Eats type of situation. So that they're discrete. They're not actually manufacturing or storage. They're delivering. So there's still a gray area. So for that last mile, we don't have. Only if it's part of a manufacturer or a caterer. So we will cover that. So it's a little bit of a gap. We do need to get that covered.
Correct. And I think that when you talk to people in the certification business and the certification program owners, we recognize it and we consider it a mega trend, and it's on everyone's radar about how we manage this. We just haven't wrapped our hands fully around how that's going to happen.
Yeah, 9,000. You could theoretically look at 9,000. You could, as a quality, but we haven't worked out how we can capture them yet. And I think it's an important market.
Yes.
Well, sometimes that's good, getting the ideas out there. What have we done so far has been more for retail ready or temperature control in a warehouse, loading, unloading. Good. That's good that the discussion is being had. Answers will come after, I'm sure. And I see now a new question comes in about all the different various programs and acronyms and that are available. So it's true, you can get lost in what I call the alphabet soup of this all. So it's good to have some of these even if it's not a question, particularly some of the comments coming in are quite interesting on sorting through that.
Yep.
Some of them are very specific.
Do we want to answer this? Do we want to answer that question about how we should, where he should be focusing on? How are we going to answer that?
Well, the one that I was going to say is with FSSC 22000, is it the same as being ISO certified? So the questionnaires sometimes just ask ISO with a box.
Okay.
So has that come across you, Jacqueline? I had you in mind that you might want to.
Right. So ISO 22000 is part of FSSC. So there is an option if a customer is asking you for ISO 22000, an organization like SGS is quite justified in awarding you an ISO 22000 certificate as well as an FSSC 22000 certificate because you have had a complete ISO 22000 audit. So in some parts of the world, ISO 22000 is very important. GFSI is less important. So in order to cover both markets, they can be issued both certificates. FSSC 22000 is larger than ISO 22000. I think I tried to explain that. It provides some added assurance. We own it, we monitor it. ISO 22000 is not owned, it's a public standard. We have an integrity program. We have the additional requirements such as food fraud, food defense that are required by much of the supply chain. So FSSC is a little bit more than ISO 22000, but you are certified to ISO 22000 within FSSC. So I hope that has answered that question. So it's yes.
But I think that in questionnaires that you may receive from your customers, if they're asking you if you're ISO certified, it may be going back to ISO 9001, Jacqueline, because it was the big thing 15 or 20 years ago to be 9001 certificated. So if they've not updated their questionnaire, it may be leading that way, but it would definitely warrant a clarification question from whoever's asking you about ISO certification. Which one do you mean?
Okay, there is a difference between ISO 22000 and ISO 9000. You can run them, as we explained, close together, side by side. Many of the elements are common, but there is a quality management system that monitors your quality and all your quality aspects relating to your customer requirements. And then ISO 22000 is your food safety management system that runs alongside for the safety of your products. So they fit very well together in that octagonal framework, but they are different.
So I've got a couple questions. I'm trying to see if I can combine them on a focused approach when you get asked so many different questions on these questionnaires. What should you focus on when deciding, as I understand it, what should you focus on when deciding a certification for your, let's say, small or middle? We do 3 products, we do them well, and someone's asked us to get certified. Maybe Jennifer, would you mind commenting on, hey, what I always say, what are the first 2 things I can be doing to get this?
I think that when you're thinking certification, the very first thing that you need to do is you need to work on your risk assessment or your HACCP or whatever you want to call it, because you need to identify what your risks are and determine how you're going to mitigate those risks. And once you've identified the risk and how you're going to mitigate it, you can build the rest of the program around it. But until you do that risk assessment, you're kind of wandering around in the dark because you really don't know what you're doing yet. So I think first and foremost is understanding your risk and how you're going to manage those risks, and then putting those programs in place. And as a certification body, whenever you talk to us about having certification, one of the first questions we're going to ask you is, have your programs been in place and are there 3 months of implementation records? Because we want to identify that you have programs in place that are effective, and when they are ineffective, you've taken corrective action and you've fixed the problem, and now they're effective again. So I think that the real answer is having a good risk assessment completed and in place and working.
I would like to expand on that a little bit, and I totally agree with that. Do your risk assessment, see where your hazards are, and then you also have to define why you're doing the certification and what's its objective. Is it, if it's for yourselves to have an efficient food safety management system that capitalizes on the process to optimize profits and reduce wastage, then you would do the management system, do ISO 22000. If your customer is requiring GFSI, then you would add FSSC to that. If it's a different, and that's because the GFSI, a customer may be requiring a GFSI benchmarked program, which is where FSSC would come in. And it depends also on where your customers are and where, what they recognize. If they're overseas, ISO often is the top need, and then you would add on to there. So protecting yourself and your company, protecting your brand and your customer.
But it is true. And also to the extent sometimes 2 days in a training class can also shed some light on what the expectations of the different standards are. So sometimes I tell my clients that are, perhaps local or going for certification for the first time, they don't necessarily have the blueprint on how, can they dedicate 2 days to go into an implementation class or an internal audit class, basically to see whether it's SGS or somebody else, but it teaches you how to evaluate your existing program in internal audits and then how to evaluate it against a chosen standard. So it's a good opportunity for training at first, and then you can always do kind of from there, clarify what changes you might need at the beginning, and we can help with that as well.
Yeah, I was going to say it's good for you because you have the overview of all the different, schemes and objectives.
Or just implementing, and from there you can always kind of add to your research. I think those are the questions that came in. I believe was there. But I think those are the ones that came in that, and if we did not get to your question, I can always email you as a follow-up. But I did want to invite everyone, these are our direct contact emails. So for Jacqueline, for Jennifer, and for myself, share your comments or any questions that you had about this content. I'm sure you're also going to get something in your email soon. But I did want to thank everyone for joining us. And I wanted to wish you a nice day and reach out if we've sparked any questions and interest. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.